Namu Myoho Renge Kyo. Namu Myoho Renge Kyo. Namu Myoho Renge Kyo. Okay, hello everyone. Namo Myoho Renge Kyo. Thanks for being here. I hope this video finds you in good health and secure. We're going to continue with this translation of Gosho. It's a little bit of a review of history and so forth, but some of you may not have heard my previous talks on Goshos and so forth. There are a lot of videos on this channel. Just a reminder, you can search through them in some form by going to the homepage of this channel, right? Click on the icon, homepage, and then in the middle under the picture, there'll be videos, playlists about, and then there'll be a little magnifying glass. That's a search for the videos on this channel, not throughout YouTube. And put in a keyword like Dharma or Karma or Myoho Renge Kyo or Na and Mu separately, so that you can find videos that are about those characters. And while I'm at it, because there seems to be some confusion, several times in several writings, Nichiren has made the statements that Namu is derived from the Sanskrit preface Sad, S-A-D, from Saddharma Pundarika Sutra. And so Sad is a devotional term, right? And in Chinese, Japanese, that translates to Namu, two separate characters, which together indicate our single-mindedness, right? These are Nichiren words, single-mindedly seek Buddha. So single-minded is Na-Mu. Every time Nichiren talks about the most important thing, he talks about our attitude and intent. Again, two characters. He talks about our steadfast resolve, right? And whenever you hear him talking about when we practice single-mindedly, with determination, with absolute confidence, he is talking about Namu, Sad. And as I've explained in other videos, Na and Mu are both characters that are necessary in Nichiren's prescriptions to practice correctly. Na being the I am completely present and here. In order to dedicate or devote myself, I first have to be present. And then Mu being I am open and receptive to and preparing to and now instantiating Myoho Renge Kyo, my Buddha, the Buddha in my mind. I am here, I am listening, thus I have heard Myoho Renge Kyo. Namu Myoho Renge Kyo. And Nichiren always talks about the 7 or 5 characters. 5 characters because he's talking about the self-practice teachings of the Myoho Renge Kyo, the Threefold, or the Lotus, the teaching of the wonderful white blossom or lotus flower, or however it's translated in many ways. This teaching of the lotus is about self-practice, invoking and experiencing Buddha in our samsaric mind, right? The 9th consciousness. But in order to experience that in samsara, one first has to be present and focused, confident, and determined to do exactly that. So I am open to Buddha. Namo Myoho Renge Kyo. I am open to Buddha, invoking Buddha this very moment. I single-mindedly seek Buddha, Myoho Renge Kyo. That's why the 7 characters. This is the practice. Break it down another way. Na-mu, self-realization, Myoho Renge Kyo. Now, Nichiren isn't saying it in 2022 with the verbs and the verbiage that we use today. I'm not inventing it, though, because he does reference Na-mu as a construct, albeit in a different language, in a different culture, at a different time, this concept of Sad, Dharma, Pundarika. Yeah? So Sad has always been there as the title of this practice of the Dharma, which is Pundarika. We've translated into the wonderful law of the Lotus, referencing the title, the Lotus Sutra, or Myoho Renge Kyo. And to practice that invocation is to first dedicate oneself to that invocation. Namu Myoho Renge Kyo. I am Buddha. Right? That's what makes the Daimoku so powerful. All right. We are at section 2, comparative profundity in doctrine. Secondly, Nichiren begins, I shall make clear the comparative profundity in doctrine among various sutras. It is stated in the Sutra of Infinite Meaning, quote, at the beginning, the teaching of the Four Noble Truths was preached in the Agama Sutras. Next, doctrines of roundabout ways to Buddhahood requiring long-term practice for attaining of enlightenment were explained through preachings of the Hodo Sutras. The Great Wisdom Sutra and the Ocean Imprint Meditation of the Flower Garland Sutra, end quote. The sutra also states, the truth has not been revealed for 40 years or so, and, quote, the Sutra of Infinite Meaning is supreme of all the sutras, end quote. This is the ovation to the Lotus, right? According to these statements, there's no doubt that those sutras expounded during the 40 years or so before the Sutra of Infinite Meaning are inferior. Duh, it's spelled out very clearly in Shakyamuni's own sermon, right? And even if you have doubts about Shakyamuni actually stating those words, those monks that had excelled, of course it's a spam risk because I don't get phone calls. Interruptions. Okay, so those scholars, those monks who excelled at memorization, word for word of what they had been taught repeatedly, day in and day out, right? The same sermon was taught for years. We know, we hear a song on the radio, and within the third listening, we know most of the lyrics, don't we? Well, remember, this is all chanting. This is all singing. Because singing is easy to, there's a pentameter to it, there's a repetition to it, it sticks in our brains. So when these monks got together and started to write stuff down, they wrote it in a specific order. They remembered the order these things were learned and taught in, right? So even if it's doubtful that Shakyamuni himself wrote that these doctrines came before from it's stated in the Sutra of Infinite Meaning, right? Which is a Mahayana Sutra. So there may be those out there who are saying, well, that was written down. And, Shakyamuni never wrote anything down. It was all verbal. But you notice the voice, as I've said before in the sutras, it's all I, first person. Because he's talking as Buddha, as the Buddha mind, which we all participate in Buddha. There's no more than one Buddhas. We all have our individual paths to Buddha, but Buddha is Buddha. Buddha is that experience of absolute knowing, of truth, of the actual process of life. To see it clearly is Buddha. So we can say it's a life state, it's a state of mind, it's a life condition. We can wrap all kinds of words around it. But it's an actual light in the attic. And anyone who's in the attic will see the same things, the same truths, right? We may all, some use stairs, some burrow a hole through the roof, some come in the vents. We all have our own path into the attic, but once we're in there, the light is the light, the attic is the attic, right? So the point is, when in the Sutra of Infinite Meanings, all of this is spelled out in the order of teachings, did Shakyamuni have to actually express that? Maybe. Almost every sutra starts out with a discussion of the attendees, and it doesn't mean there were 8,000 bodhisattvas sitting there waiting to hear him. What we get from personages in the expedient meanings and teachings is conceptually there are various developments of mind that this preaching will penetrate, will apply to. From the absolute novice to the very developed bodhisattva, arhat, whatever, this teaching is for all of you. That's what that introduction in every single sutra is about, to indicate the quality of the teaching and who it applies to. It's quite universal, right? There's no doubt that Shakyamuni said those things every time he taught us, delivered this sermon, because he moved around and he was addressing a different crowd all the time. A lot of the same people that were traveling with him, but always a lot of new people who were curious about this man they had heard about. What is he teaching? What is he saying? So for him to say this is universal, this includes those of you who are barely initiated to this or ignorant of it, and those of you who are following along, who are dedicating your entire lives to memorization and recitation, this applies to all of you. That's what that part of the sutra is about. So it's not hard to conceive that he would have a chronology, right? Question. Here goes Nichiren. The Sutra of the Pure Land of Mystic Glorification states that, quote, supreme of all the Buddhist scriptures, that it is supreme of all the Buddhist scriptures. And the thing is, perhaps at the time the Pure Land was taught, it was. It superseded earlier teachings, but it's no longer that. And this is the point of quoting the Sutra of Infinite Meaning, because it obviously came later and it dispenses with the superiority of everything that came before it. Not that it's null and void, but it is null and void to the time and the capacity of the people in relation to how they need to develop their Buddha-ness, their Buddha mind. It's no longer relevant. That may have worked 1,000 years ago. But people are different now. Minds are different now. And all that work, people just won't do it. They're too preoccupied with too many other things pulling at their attention. So trying to do that, they'll never succeed. So it's not that that teaching is invalid in itself. It just had a time and place. Now we have to address the mind differently to achieve this. And ultimately, when he gets to the Lotus, he's describing how he himself did it. Do it like I did it. You will experience it immediately. Right? So people are resisting this. The Great Cloud Sutra claims to be the wheel-turning noble king of sutras, whereas the Sutra of the Golden Splendor says of itself to be the king of sutras. Right? So there's confusion. Because this rhetoric is repeated throughout sutras, people are saying, well, which one's true? Well, if you understand the chronology, one supersedes the other, right? These are cumulative teachings. If you go to college, or even in high school, and you're given a choice of classes to take, surely you're familiar with prerequisites. Well, I want to take that class on journalism. Well, you can't until you take this class on English Lit or grammar or so on and so forth. But I don't want to learn English Lit. But you need to take it in order that you can apply those skills when you take journalism. Well, I just want to take journalism. Sorry, can't do it. Right? There's an order to things. It's not that difficult to understand, right? The Sutra of Pure Mystic Glorification states it's supreme. The Great Clouds claims to be the noble king of sutras, whereas the Sutra of Golden Splendor says of itself to be the king of sutras. From these statements, we can see that it is customary for Mahayana sutras to claim their supremacy. How can you then say from only one passage of the Sutra of Infinite Meaning that it is superior to all those sutras preached in the 40 years or so before it? Because it says so. Let's see how Nichiren responds. Answer. When Lord Shakyamuni Buddha preaches in each sutra that it is the Supreme Sutra, we cannot distinguish between Mahayana and Hinayana sutras. It's in all of them. Or between provisional and true sutras. If sectarian people merely talk about the differences among the various sutras and compare the profundity of their doctrines when no actual differences exist, it will not only be the source of controversy, but also cause the evil karma of slandering the true Dharma. You're getting in the way of Buddhahood, of allowing people in that time to attain Buddhahood. You're getting in the way because you're establishing false controversies out of ignorance. That's what he's saying. When those sutras preached during the 42 years of the pre-Lotus period claim that they are the prime sutras, however, what they are compared with is not the definitive. Some sutras claim to be supreme in comparison to Hinayana sutras. Others claim to be first because their Buddha have the reward body, enjoying eternal longevity instead of 80 years of life. Still others say that theirs are first merely because they explain the triple truth completely. The truth of the temporal, the void, and the middle. They do not claim to be the first of all the Buddhist scriptures. See, can't think of the word now. I'm getting senile. The order of things, the consecutiveness of the teachings. You have to consider the context of the statement. On the contrary, this Sutra of Infinite Meaning states that it is the prime sutra of all the sutras preached in 40 years or so before it was preached. It definitely doesn't rely on the student to understand the context and the consecutive teachings. It says it now, what we're teaching now, everything you've heard 40 years or so, whatever order you think it's in, is a preparatory teaching. It is not the culminating teaching. Question: which is superior then, the Lotus Sutra or the Sutra of Infinite Meaning? This argumentation, we see it a lot in Buddhism, and it can get tiring once you know this, but maybe you've never heard this before. So I will go on. Answer: the Lotus Sutra is. Kapoomp. Not a long-winded answer. There's just one answer. The Lotus. Question: how do you know this? Oh, man. Okay. What does Nichiren say? In the Sutra of Infinite Meaning, neither the possibility of obtaining Buddhahood by the two vehicles, two categories of Hinayana saints, Shavaka and Pratyeka Buddha, the Arhat thing, nor the attaining enlightenment of Shakyamuni Buddha in the eternal past are revealed, right? The pre-existing, always abiding state of Buddha as a potential, as a, what's the word I always use? A component of, come on, mind, please work today. A property. A property means that something is an influence to other things. But that does not mean it is experienced. It simply means that it's there. Right? A property of water is that it quenches your thirst. But that thirst quenching isn't happening in the water. It's just I forgot the word again, a property of water. But it's experienced when it's in the mouth, right? And integrated into the body. Then it quenches thirst, right? Just like Buddha, it is a property, but only is it experienced when we create this massively complex apparatus that can emerge a mind. Once the mind emerges anywhere, but certainly we recognize from study and experience that we uniquely as sentient creatures develop, expand, and emerge our mind into this multifaceted, amazing observer of life, of every property of life, of every component of life. We've even observed that a lot of what we know is going on in life isn't visible to our naked eye. That's why we develop powerful microscopes and mathematics and make predictions and say this agrees with what we thought it should be. We have a huge particle accelerator, and we can see what the tiniest particles or states of energy and can do when they break apart, run into one another, where intense pressures and temperatures are created. We can see the behavior of these tiniest of particles, descriptions of energy, how they behave, how they break apart, what are they made of, right? That, with our mind, we can perceive that. No other way. This is where Buddha can be realized. And this is what we do. Namu Myoho Renge Kyo. Nor attaining enlightenment by Shakyamuni Buddha in the eternal past are revealed. Right? This is the lifespan of the Tathagata chapter. That's this core aha moment in self-practice, where we realize that although we can experience Buddha in this contemporary mind that we're manifesting in this life, that actually we're tapping into a property of all life, a property of the universe, not just something us humans can realize, something far more vast. And the humility that we gain from seeing that, experiencing that, is what expiates all of our attachments to the simple little game that we're playing in samsara, of possessing and owning and fear of losing. How ridiculous that is. It's not important. In the grand scope of life, we become amazed at being such a participant and being so privileged to experience it in this brief time we have. No, do not waste any more time, right? Stay in that realization. My nose is itching like crazy. All right. Therefore, in the Teacher of the Dharma chapter in the Lotus Sutra, when it is claimed that the Lotus Sutra is superior to all of the sutras, those already preached, now being preached, and yet to be preached, the Sutra of Infinite Meaning is included among those being now preached, making it clear that it is so easy to understand and put confidence in that it actually is less truthful than the Lotus Sutra. Less truthful? I doubt the translation is accurate there, but certainly less important, less significant as far as attaining Buddhahood is concerned. It's simply a really good anchor, an introduction pointing to this teaching, Lotus Sutra. Right? Question, which is superior, the Lotus Sutra or the Nirvana Sutra? Well, it just told you. Answer, the Lotus Sutra is. Because, you know why this question? Because the Nirvana Sutra was taught after the Lotus Sutra. So it must be superior. No, you weren't listening. Very clearly, he says, before, now, and in the future, this is the supreme teaching. Duh. Let's see how, he answered it, the Lotus Sutra. I'm not going to mess around. You know this. Question, why do you say that? Oh, you won't let it go. Answer, in the Nirvana Sutra, the Buddha himself declared, quote, 8,000 Shravakas were guaranteed to be future Buddhas in the Lotus Sutra. It is as though a great harvest was reaped in autumn and stored in the warehouse for winter, leaving nothing else to be done in the Nirvana Sutra, end quote. Again, it is said in the, quote, Teacher of the Dharma chapter in the Lotus Sutra, that the sutras to be preached, like the Nirvana Sutra, are not as difficult to believe and understand as the Lotus Sutra is. This means that the Nirvana Sutra is not as significant as the Lotus Sutra. It said truthful, but again, I don't believe that's the correct word. Anyway, it makes more sense to say it's significant, right? It's the same thing without the onus of, I don't know, some mystical measurement tool. Question. According to the Nirvana Sutra, the sutras preached before it all contain false views. What do you think of that? Where'd you read that? Answer. The Buddha's purpose of appearing in the world was to preach the Lotus Sutra, in which he preaches the second chapter on the expedience, quote unquote. Quote, my old wish has already been fulfilled. It is indeed the time now to expound the Mahayana teaching definitively, end quote. And in the 16th chapter on, quote, the lifespan of the Tathagata, or the lifespan of the Buddha, should say Tathagata. Actually, however, good men I have been the Buddha since eternal past. End quote. Nevertheless, regarding the comparative superiority in doctrine, the Buddha himself declares in the 10th chapter of the Teacher of the Dharma chapter that although he has expounded numerous thousands, tens of thousands, and hundreds of millions of sutras, the Lotus Sutra is superior to all the sutras which has already been preached, are being preached, and will be preached. Then in the 11th chapter, on the appearance of the stupa of treasures, jeweled stupa, treasure tower, right? Different translations. The Buddha of many treasures appeared from underground, future Buddha, testifying, quote, what has been said by Shakyamuni Buddha is all true, end quote. While various Buddhas, the manifestations or emanations of Shakyamuni Buddha in the worlds all over the universe, because he's a property of life. Not Shakyamuni, Buddha, Tathagata, stretched out their tongues to reach the Brahma heaven, attesting to the words of Shakyamuni to be true. So this is the great sermon in the sky, right? All teachings point to this central teaching, Lotus. Thus, the comparative superiority between the Lotus Sutra and all other sutras has been resolved by Shakyamuni Buddha, the Buddha of many treasures, and Buddhas manifested in worlds all over the universe. No, all over the universe. Again, I remind you, Buddhism is a specific study and method for living this life right now to its fullest, without attachment, emotions, stresses, anxieties, because all of those are based on this temporary hanging on to and possession. But when you see the big picture, all of that is just noise. It's still there. It's just your attachment to it, your understanding of your place in the universe becomes so much more grand that these things are just petty. They don't grab your attention anymore. You're freed from them. Therefore, when the Nirvana Sutra rejects sutras preached before it, the Lotus Sutra is not included, because the Nirvana Sutra, too, is trying to say that the Lotus Sutra is superior to others. However, those of false views in the Nirvana Sutra refers to Kashyapa Bodhisattva and his followers who could not attain Buddhahood by listening to the Lotus Sutra, but attained it through the Nirvana Sutra. That is, Kashyapa Bodhisattva and his followers confessed themselves to have been, quote, of false views before the Nirvana Sutra, end quote. This has nothing to do with the comparative superiority of sutras. Oh, that's an interesting note, isn't it? Because in the Nirvana Sutra, it does call out certain practitioners to attain Buddhahood. So you might be confused. You might say, well, in the Lotus Sutra, this is self-practice. This is the way, the quickest way, the immediate way for anyone of any capacity to attain Buddhahood, right? And still, there are holdouts, notably Kashyapa and his bunch. They said, right? And they went on doing other things. And so as Shakyamuni is in his deathbed and he's dying, and he preaches the Nirvana Sutra, all he's getting is a barrage of questions from different people. What are we going to do when you're gone? Who will be your teacher? And constantly, Shakyamuni says, do what I've taught you. Do what you know. Do what I've said before. In other words, practice the Lotus Sutra. Practice self. That is your teacher. Because ultimately, we all teach ourselves, right? I've talked about this many times. So the doctrine of self-enlightenment is the Lotus Sutra. Just keep doing that, and you will attain enlightenment. But Kashyapa and his bunch went, well, I mean, he's dying, so what could he possibly know now? Whatever, I'm making that up. But they didn't invest in it. They didn't listen to it. And then after he was gone, maybe like the Nirvana Sutra, they started to consider, as people are reciting it and memorizing it, right, as they did in the day. He hears this and he starts to hear some logic in it, and his group, they start to listen to it. And as the Nirvana Sutra keeps referring back to the Lotus Sutra, they finally get that, because they were reciting the Lotus Sutra too. They just had their doubts about it. And as they're hearing the Nirvana Sutra preached, they're thinking, well, maybe it's correct after all, because the leaving, the nirvana, the disappearance of Buddha in the body of Shakyamuni is actually gone. And they're still looking for leadership. So that through the nirvana, they get sent back to the Lotus Sutra, and they get it. So you could say the Nirvana Sutra predicts their, or even says at the end of the Nirvana Sutra, Ananda attains enlightenment, right? But that enlightenment is by virtue of the Lotus Sutra. It just took them a while to get it through their thick skulls. Sometimes, I mean, Ananda, very educated in all the sutras. It's not that he was stupid or incapable. He was just stubborn. And something had to jar him enough to go, oh crap, there it is. And so he attains enlightenment. This story plays out several times in the Nirvana, right? But the Nirvana isn't the teaching that allowed for him, or provided for him, the opportunity to instantiate the property of Buddha in his mind. That was the Lotus. Section 3, do we have time? Ooh, this is going to perk the ears of some of you, not all of you. I'll just begin it, and maybe that'll be a savory enticement for, yeah, this is going to take, oh no, section 4 is right there. Let's see if we can finish it. Distinction between the Mahayana and Hinayana teaching. I know some of you have come to this practice by way of Theravada practices. Why is that pointing over there? Right? And you resist the labeling of Hinayana on your practice. So I won't do that. What I will say, though, is Theravada is an extension of those early teachings. It would be grouped in that period of the Agama Sutras, right? So, what is this difference between Mahayana and Hinayana, or early teachings and later, arguably more scholastic, scholarly investigations of Shakyamuni's teaching, right? Whether you see that as a construct of the practice or Shakyamuni's actual words, let's see what Nichiren has to say about it. In the third place, I would like to distinguish between Mahayana and Hinayana teachings. Okay. Question. What are the differences between Mahayana and Hinayana teachings? Answer. Generally speaking, the sutras preached in the Eon period are Hinayana, while those preached in the Kigan, Hodo, Hanya, and Hoke Nehan periods are Mahayana. Okay, so that's a specific chronology with dates and times, right? Certainly in a certain chronology, we can debate the times. In addition, those sutras which expounded the 6 unenlightened realms of hell, hunger, spirits, beasts, and birds, Ashura, human beings, and heavenly beings without expounding the four enlightened realms of Shravaka, Pratyeka Buddha, Bodhisattvas, and Buddhas are Hinayana, while those which expound all the 10 realms are Mahayana. So, still doesn't clear it up, because Theravada has, over time, accepted even the Lotus Sutra in its own way. But that didn't come till much later, right? Much more contemporary to our day. So, it's still kind of wishy-washy. Let's see what else he says. Other than these two main distinctions, comparing the truthfulness or the significance in doctrine between the Lotus Sutra and the other sutras, those sutras preached in the 40 years or so before the Lotus Sutra, here we go again, are in reality Hinayana. Whoa! You may not have been prepared to hear that, right? What Nichiren is saying, and I'll go ahead and finish that sentence. Before the Lotus Sutra are in reality Hinayana, although they are commonly called Mahayana Sutras. Only the Lotus Sutra is Mahayana. Now that's Nichiren's doctrine. And can you see why he says that? Because without the stricture of the this word is just not going to come to me today. The order of the teachings, the chronology of the teachings, the years of the teachings. Even without that discussion, the fact remains that the final self-practice teaching for anyone to practice is the Lotus Sutra. Everything prior to the Lotus Sutra is the smaller vehicle, right? Remember those terms? The Lotus Sutra is the great vehicle, the one vehicle teaching. We hear that a lot as we study Buddhism. This is the one vehicle. In the Lotus Sutra, or is it the Infinite Meaning? I think it's the Lotus Sutra where he says, and he's talking to, I don't think it's Kashyapa. Who is he talking to? Is it Ananda? My memory. Anyway, he's talking to one of his inner circle students, Shariputra. And he's saying, no, Shariputra, there are not 2 or 3 ways of attaining Buddhahood. You're bringing that baggage along from earlier teachings, from the smaller vehicle teachings. There is only the one way. And that's this teaching, the Lotus Sutra teaching. We call it the Lotus Sutra teaching, but what is it actually called? It's called the Myoho Renge Kyo teaching. The Myoho Renge Kyo. This is the one vehicle. There are no other ways. Do you remember that from the Lotus Sutra? And so this is why Nichiren is saying, this is the ultimate practice. This is the great vehicle. This is the one vehicle tool for anyone, any sentient being, to attain Buddhahood. And because that Buddhahood has always been a property of life itself, it's existed as long as the universe has existed, and it is a component of even a rock, a non-sentient. Although it can't emerge a mind to experience it, it's still a component, a property of what makes that rock, just like you and I. It's very mind-bending, but it's not. We have the capacity today, in our day and age, to understand that concept of energy, the formation of things, the potential. That doesn't mean all potential is realized, but Buddhism says you can realize all your available potential in this life. You don't have to be stuck on the tendencies and conditions that help construct you. You can think beyond that. You can experience beyond that because you have a mind. Attitude and intent. Attitude and intent. Everything you feed into your mind filters out into your experience by virtue of your attitude and intent. Ultimately. Question. It is customary for each Buddhist sect to claim that only its basic sutras are the real Mahayana, while those of other sects are merely the provisional Mahayana. Do you hear that? It's customary. Realizing your Buddha nature isn't a custom. It's a property of life. It's something for you to experience to its fullest, to liberate yourself, to inculcate into your experience of life. It's not a custom. What a bozo question. It's customary for everyone to say they have the right? That sounds like religion. Oh, no, you can't practice their Christianity. Our Christianity is the right one. We have that in our own neighborhood here. I'm surrounded by 10 frickin' churches. Oh, don't go to their church. It's evil. It's wrong. It's our church is the only true one. How is that even possible? And here it is, right? In Buddhism, well, it's customary. How did that, even if it is a custom, how do you justify a custom for a practice of liberation that's universal? Oh, it's customary that those people are not ever going to attend. We'll just say that. How egotistical is that? All right. Sorry for the commentary, but oh my goodness. It is impossible for us, later students, to decide whether or not claims made by various sects are true. Really? Besides, I've never heard of a scriptural statement to prove that various Mahayana sutras are Hinayana in comparison to the Lotus Sutra. Do you have any scriptural proof for your claim? Yeah, study. Get off your butt. These people that just like to be told what to do, and then they get arrogant about it. Answer. The doctrines upon which various sects were established confront one another, especially in the latter age of degeneration. When error takes precedence over the truth in worldly matters, as well as in the world of Buddhism, it is regrettable that we, the ignorant, cannot tell what is right and what is wrong. Nevertheless, even with my low intelligence, this is Nichiren talking, when I come across a clear statement in the Sutra of Infinite Meaning stating, quote, recite it with me, the truth has not yet been revealed for 40 years or so, end quote. I cannot trust judgments of right or wrong by masters of various sects unless they are based on scriptural passages superior to this one. Besides, in answering your question, I should not say categorically that compared to the Lotus Sutra, various Mahayana sutras are Hinayana. So let me quote scriptural proof. It is stated in the Expedience chapter of the Lotus Sutra, quote, the Buddha himself resides in the Mahayana teachings, ... Enlightened with the Mahayana Dharma, a great wisdom of equality, if he guides the people with Hinayana Dharma, even just one, he would be committing the sin of greed. He certainly would not do it. Pretty intriguing statement, isn't it? This passage means that various Mahayana sutras other than the Lotus Sutra are all Hinayana. The lifespan of the Buddha chapter of the Lotus Sutra also refers to, quote, those with less virtue and much sin who are satisfied with small dharma, Hinayana teachings, right? Smaller vehicle. These are examples of statements in the sutras designating all the sutras other than the Lotus Sutra preached by Shakyamuni Buddha during 40 years or so as Hinayana. Annotations by great grandmasters Tendai and Miao Lo also regard those sutras of 40 years or so Hinayana teachings, which would probably be unacceptable to teachers of other sects. Therefore, I have cited passages only from these sutras. Again, this isn't Nichiren saying this. I'm just telling you what the sutras say. You don't want to believe the words of Shakyamuni Buddha, then why are you practicing Buddhism? Really? Go chant broomstick to a wall. Whatever. Either you're practicing Buddha, realizing Buddha, or you're not. Next, section 4, reasons for discarding provisional sutras. In the fourth place, let me explain why we should discard provisional sutras, putting resolve in the true sutras instead. We'll leave that for next time. Nichiren did not shy away from these typical common human controversies. But his scholarship so amazing, so envious, that he could remember and cite all of these words, these phrases from other sutras at will. It truly is something to revere. This is why he's our mentor. This is why he's our teacher, right? And as I go through these Gosho with you, my confidence builds every day. I'm human, just like you. I go up and down. I even forget until I tell myself, you know what I need to do? I need to go chant some daimoku, maybe do some study. And whenever I think I need to do some study, I try to put myself in front of this camera so that I can share that experience with you. I believe this is how I practice my bodhisattva capacity. If I could do more, I would. But this, to me, feels really important and really wholesome, because I know that many of you are watching this. Maybe not all oh, that reminds me. I forgot to video Gongyo yesterday, and I apologize for that. There are many recorded videos with Gongyo in them, so I trust you can find those. But I apologize. Again, I get so involved in these dialogues. They're not really dialogues, but in these study periods, I sometimes forget everything else. So again, keep your practice strong. That's the message. Believe in yourself, right? Because your path to Buddha is your path to Buddha. Namo Myoho Renge Kyo. Thank you for all your support. Thank you for liking, subscribing, sharing, right? If you can, Patreon, you can donate. It's all, tax deductible, if that's an incentive. Or to me directly, if you don't want to go through Patreon, that's fine. You can go to paypal.me/Sifu Sylvain and directly donate into the PayPal account for this school. Or send, like I've often said, incense candles. Make sure they're white candles. Make sure the incense are, good quality incense. Anything that you can do that supports this Sangha, supports your practice, and is greatly, greatly appreciated as my endeavor, my bodhisattva mission, right? With that, I'm going to let you go, finally. And certainly hope to see you in the next one, okay? Bye for now.